From Sweden, Hanoch comments on the news from Israel. Yesterday and today in Israel, the Israeli government is trying to adopt a budget for this year, a war budget essentially. Before I talk about that, I want to go back and talk about how Israel got into the situation with this war in Israel. And before I even do that, let us pause for a second in a moment of prayer to pray for our precious brothers and sisters in the Israeli Defense Forces and the civilians who have been wounded, that they should be safe, and they should heal, and they should be granted every success. Ana Hashem, Hoshiana, please Hashem, save them now. Ana Hashem, Hatzlichana, please Hashem, bring them success now. People ask, how is it that Israel got so attacked so badly by Gaza and Hamas? And the answer simply, unfortunately, is that Israel did not expect that they were going to do that they were going to break through their fence and attack Israel in a full-scale attack. Israel built a fence there and had a false sense of security from it. The Dutch, in contrast, the people of Holland, the Netherlands, historically, when faced with the threat of inundation by the sea into their lowland plain, they responded by building incredible dikes, incredible dams that could stand the worst storm in 1,000 years. And in fact, that succeeded in protecting them from the inundation of the sea. Israel, unfortunately, did not take such a proactive approach, and unfortunately the tragedy that happened. But it didn't happen in one day, and I believe that what was lacking was deterrence. Obviously, deterrence is what keeps people from attacking you. And that wasn't lost in one day. It was lost over a long period, over a 30-year period. And I'd like to briefly, for those of you who haven't lived in Israel like me for the past 29 years, I'd like to review some of those milestones, those sad milestones along the way. Just to review, in 1948, during the War of Independence, the neighboring Arab states of Palestine encouraged the Arab residents of Palestine to flee so their armies could destroy the Jews, and hopefully those Arab nations thought they could also take over parts of Palestine for themselves. And that brought many Arabs to Gaza, many Palestinian Arabs to the Gaza area, where Egypt, who ruled Gaza from the 1984 war on, 1949, I believe they took over there. The Egyptians did not let the Gazans leave there, not to come into Egypt, not to go to other places. That was the beginning of the Palestinian community in Gaza. In 1967, Israel takes over Gaza as well as other parts of Jordan and Egypt and Syria during the Six-Day War. And at that time, the Gazans are not trying to attack Israel. And in fact, for several decades, the Gazans are not trying to attack Israel. Israel is controlling the Gaza Strip, and the Gazans are living their lives, and everyone's happy. In 1994, critical year in 1994, Israel embarked on the Oslo Accords, which, as the first phase was called Gaza and Jericho first, those two areas, Gaza and the city of Jericho, became under Palestinian Authority control in 1994. After that point, Gazans started attacking Israeli troops in the intersections close to Gaza. In 2005, Israel removes all Israeli residents from the Gaza Strip, talking about 9,000 or 10,000 Israelis from some 20-odd communities, which were located south of Gaza City in Khan Yunis, between the Gaza City and the Mediterranean, agricultural communities that Israel built there since 1967. Israel in an operation called the disengagement, removed all of its citizens from there. At the same time, Israel also relinquished control of the corridor between Egypt and Gaza, which is known as the Philadelphia Corridor. He relinquished control of that to Egypt, which was a critical point and mistake, perhaps, in this process, because that allowed for the smuggling of weapons and rockets from Egypt into Gaza. Because it's just a big open desert there, the Sinai Desert. It's not like it's next to Cairo, it's just a giant desert, and all types of smugglers and people can come there and smuggle things in, which they did in all types of tunnels. Because it's just sandy there, it's very easy to build tunnels there. That's where they built an underground city there, because it's just building in the sand. It's not even dirt, it's like sand. In 2006, there are 5, I'm not sure it's 5 or 6, but it's not so important. In 2005 or 6, there's an election in Gaza, and Hamas has the clear majority. I think like 70% of the people vote for Hamas to be the government in the Palestinian Authority. And the Palestinian Authority did not let them take over full control until 2007, when Hamas forcibly expelled the Palestinian Authority from Gaza. So to review, Israel creates the Palestinian Authority with the hope. This was the hope of the creators of the Oslo Accords, Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres and others, that the Palestinian Authority will be able to control Hamas. And then in an election, the Palestinian Authority is outvoted by Hamas, and Hamas becomes the government of the Gaza Strip. I remember back in 94 and 95, when this was being discussed, the Oslo Accords, Shimon Peres, who was then, he was the foreign minister, and he was the prime minister, he said, if Hamas takes over Gaza, the IDF will retake Gaza in 5 minutes. Okay, that did not happen, and it's not happening now, and it's been over 30 years since Israel relinquished control of Gaza. In 2006, the Gazans attack an Israeli tank. There's a border excursion combined with up in the Hezbollah in the north. There's also a kidnapping of Israeli soldiers in the north. And in the south, near Gaza, Israel, there's rockets, thousands of rockets fired into Israel from Gaza. And there's a cross-border excursion, and they actually capture a tank, kill the soldiers, and take one of the soldiers hostage in Gaza. And that hostage is kept for 5 years. 5 years. That Israeli soldier is held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. This, of course, is part of the great lack of deterrence, that we didn't respond strongly at that. We didn't respond strongly to all these rockets coming by through over the years. It just all leads to them thinking they can do more and more and more, and we're not going to respond properly. In the end, in 2011, that soldier is exchanged by Israel for over some like 1,200 terrorists, including some of the leaders of the current war against Israel in Gaza on the part of Hamas. So again, it's a terrible lack of deterrence, giving into terrorism, giving into their hostage-taking, etc., which encourages them to take more hostages. It's very painful for me to talk about these things, but people have to understand the background in order to know where we stand today and how we go forward. Israel was attacked in various other attacks throughout the years. I don't remember the years. There's like 4 or 5 times that suddenly there's often sporadic rockets, but they would just do hundreds of rockets at a time. And then sometimes Israel would get into retaliations for a few days or weeks. And this went on over the past years. At the same time, Israel continued to supply Gaza with water and electricity, which seems to me like very naive. Why we should supply someone who's shooting at us with water and electricity? But that's what we did. And again, encourage them to think that they can continue to do these things. And starting a few years ago, I don't know exactly what year, but in the past couple of years, Israel allowed Qatar, the evil people in Qatar, they should fall down on their noses, allowed them to fund Hamas directly to the tunes of billions of dollars, I don't know what, which allowed them to smuggle in all types of weapons, which are now used against us, all these rocket-propelled grenades and all these rockets and all these things were presumably bought with all this money that they got from Qatar. So that's a little sad background to how we got into this mess. Now I want to talk about what Israel today is talking about yesterday in Israel Sunday, and Sunday, January 14th, and maybe till today, I don't know, talking about trying to pass this war budget. So the Prime Minister said in the cabinet meeting, the government meeting that began the session of the government meeting, not the parliament. Again, this is the difference in Israel between the parliament and the government. It's confusing for an American, but the government is the people who have a coalition, and the parliament is everyone else, or including everyone else, including the government. There's 120 members of the parliament in Israel. So the Prime Minister said that he wants to pass a war budget, and he wants to spend, he said, from now on we have to invest much more in military spending. Why? He says, because we can't be dependent anymore on anyone. And therefore we have to be able to not just invest in billions, but tens of billions of shekels and dollars in our military infrastructure, so that we could produce all the things we need ourselves, essentially, he said, or more of the things that we need ourselves. So what's the background for this? I presume, again, he doesn't say out loud in this meeting or I don't know, or elsewhere, I presume that he's frustrated that America, who was our main place we're dependent on for military things, America probably put bounds on what Israel could do in this war, threatening not to provide the military things that we need if they don't comply, and therefore the Prime Minister was not, and the government was probably not able to prosecute the war, as they might see fit. I assume that's why. However, I don't see this as the answer, and I see it, in fact, as it's a major decision to commit so much money and to go into the budget deficit in order to invest in military things. Again, I don't think our primary mistakes here were that we didn't have enough military hardware. The mistakes were just not using the stuff we had to create proper deterrence. Our mistakes were to create the Palestinian Authority there in the first place. Our mistakes were not to respond strongly anytime any single rocket came over our border. Our mistake was to give in to terrorists, released hundreds of terrorists in return for one Israeli soldier, instead of saying, give us our soldier or we will destroy half your city, for example. So I don't think that the answer is military thing. And in fact, I see it as part of a bad direction, that this is part of the current Prime Minister's thinking, this idea that Israel has to somehow be some military superpower. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's Israel's role to be a military superpower or even a mini superpower. I think that's a waste of a lot of resources which are used for a lot of other things. I don't think the military industry is a good, healthy thing for the economy. It's not a productive thing. It's just the war industry, I don't believe, is something that contributes much long term to a healthy prosperity, and it actually makes you dependent on foreign markets, foreign arms markets for your livelihood, which I think is a very negative thing. And again, it's part of this thinking of the Prime Minister that Israel has to go in the direction of being a bigger superpower, etc. And I don't think that's our role. I think it's perfectly fine to buy weapons from other countries, even if it creates a certain dependence. But I think we should be able to defend ourselves properly with even weapons that we buy from other people. I don't think we need to be fully independent. It seems like a nice hope to be independent, but sometimes you have to say, look, no, the price is just too much, and you just have to use what you have a little more intelligently and effectively. So those are my thoughts. It's not easy things to say, but I might be wrong, as I often am, but I do feel a need to share my opinion with you. So I send you our love from abroad, and hope to be back in Israel soon, and thank you so much for listening.